Hello, and welcome to the MentorDino podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Rossier. I am an architect and founder of MentorDino. Join me each week as I speak with amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry, as we are all part of a larger interconnected community. We discuss everything from career stories, lessons learned, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, welcome to the conversation. And if you like this episode, please do me a favor by hitting subscribe, like, or share it with a friend. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own unique career journey. On this episode of the MentorDino podcast, I want to focus in on a career on the specification side. If you are looking to make a pivot to your career, dive into learning more about specifications and why it's so important on our projects. So I have 3 guests. I want to highlight our conversation from different avenues and facets in your career that you could use and leverage depending on where you are. The first one I want to introduce you to is Melody Fontenot. She was episode number 13, and she actually transitioned from traditional architect over to spec writer within her own firm, and then over to Deltec for a short time, and now a consultant specifications writer. So then she helps multiple firms on their projects. So she's been an architect, an in-house spec writer on the actual forming and editing of master specs, and then over on the consultant side, helping out firms across the country. So this one I pulled out highlighting what that transition was like. So a lot of the times I talk to senior professionals on that transition where they're going from being a traditional architect or project architect into project management or principal role, where you're really having that hands-off side of a project and being that high level, and how a lot of people struggle with that. So in her episode, we talk about that transition where you're not that architect on the entire project and you're a component of it, and how being that resource for multiple firms and for those projects as well. So hopefully you guys learn a lot about Melody and enjoy this clip.
Part of being a good architect is figuring out who you can contact, figure out the information you need, because it's a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And moving on to you switching to being a full-time spec writer and stepping away from that architect role, what made that decision for you, or what were the stepping stones that you're like, I really like specs and I want to do that full time?
I feel like was resistant to it. And when I was making a move from Oklahoma to Oregon, that was when I found out through a CSI friend that there was a position open at Master Spec. And, I basically just went for it and ended up, I think, getting my foot in the door partially because of my CSI. Certifications and having a friend there through CSI. So it was actually something I hadn't really thought about. I had been thinking about as I moved, like, would I want to be an independent consultant and just do specs on my own, be my own boss? And then I thought, gosh, that seems like I'm not the type of person that really wants to necessarily run my own business and do the invoicing side of it and all those other kind of admin things that come along with the business ownership side. And then, of course, moving from Oklahoma to Oregon, I was also like, it seems a little bit of a big step to try to go out on my own when I'm also changing regions, going to somewhere where I really don't know anyone, except for a couple of CSI friends that I've met at conferences before I moved here. But so that just didn't seem like the wisest of moves. And when the master spec opportunity opened up, I jumped on board and got it was very interesting to learn just about even styles of a Word document and how those control, that page format kind of stuff we talked about, and some of the things that I hadn't had as much time to dig into while I'm working on projects. And I really actually got to do some very focused research as I was updating sections there, and you'd really get to kind of dive into a certain topic. So that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed being able to do the kind of the deep dive and really try to learn. Like I did some updates to the unit masonry section, and I got to, learn a whole lot about all the different organizations that are kind of around masonry and brick and things like that. And I I cut that master section down from 72 pages to 66 pages, and I felt like that was a very big feat.
That is very big.
Trying to streamline some things. But it was just interesting, even in that process. Like I talked to one manufacturer who said, yeah, you really don't need like the rubberized asphalt copper in there anymore, that flashing type. Nobody's
Hmm.
really making it anymore. So just kind of being able to have some of that, it felt like more behind the scenes information about some products. And I was also in charge of some of the waterproofing sections. So I did some deep dives there, and I was amazed at how like I felt like I needed to call my friend from high school who's a chemistry teacher and ask her for a crash course, because it was, polyethyl, just, STPE, all the different chemistries and chemicals that go into the waterproofing and roofing membranes. And it was a lot. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting to dig into some of that, and then find even more of those little nuances, like even just the difference in things being called fiberglass or glass fiber. There's a difference. Just some of that stuff was very interesting. Some of those little tiny nuances, and being exposed to that whole process of how those documents are updated, and how the software works and all that. And then Conspectus, I did really want to keep doing specs, and Conspectus has a reputation that was just, like they seemed like the gold standard of spec companies. And they just seemed like it was all these people who I'd heard of through CSI that are working together. And then I was like, oh, and they have their own software. That's just super cool. And I will say, I feel like I am now, like, I've had my first ever like proactive boss. I know it's really hard in business. You of course, bosses have to be proactive and have forethought and to stay in business. But I always felt like, especially at architecture firms, there's more reacting going on in management than thinking ahead. And it is hard to balance those two things and, keep everybody on track, but then moving forward somewhere
Yeah.
where to be going, and not just kind of standing still and doing things the way you've always done them.
Hmm.
I do think architecture in general, this industry gets really hung up on that. Contractors too, right? Like
Yeah.
they'll just add more costs to a bid if it's something they're not as familiar with, sort of that unknown factor. And even that was something I kind of learned at the master spec portion of my career was, how hard it is for like a new and innovative material to get to market.
Hmm.
If you want a UL test, that's tens of thousands of dollars, right? Like, so
Yeah.
to get listed and do all those tests that need to be done, it's a long, arduous track. So it's really amazing how many pieces of the puzzle there are. And honestly, some days I'm amazed that buildings get built
Yeah.
at all, right? I'm like,
And new
oh,
products come in because of
yeah,
that barrier, and then it's a long lead time for them because they're trying to at least get on the spec. But
yes,
then even if the specs and the design may take years depending on the size of the project, and then by the
yep,
time they're actually built, if they're more of a last finished material, they're not going in until the very end.
yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
definitely. um I know you've mentioned a lot about CSI and your involvement. Can you explain a little bit more of what roles you've had within CSI and how that's really affected who you are
Sure.
today?
Yeah. So I think I joined in, oh my gosh, it was 2006. So I've been a member of CSI for 17 years now. And I had not been in that long. I basically started going to those CDT classes, and I started going to some of the meetings, and then I was approached and asked to do something with, like a student liaison role. And then the next year they asked me to be a director on the board. And then maybe the next year I got a call asking if I wanted to be the chapter president. And I was like, whoa, what an honor. And then I sort of figured out, I was like, oh, nobody else wanted to do this. Like they were looking for some fresh blood. I see.
Yep.
I see what's going on. But I did. I took them up on that opportunity, and I was the Oklahoma City chapter president. And then actually, that was supposed to be a 1-year term, but my president-elect ended up not being able to renew his membership, and this was kind of right around the 2008 downturn, where the economy tanked, and there was just a lot of, kind of extra economic things going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed to serve a second year. And one of the reasons I agreed to serve that second year as president was because they sent the president and president-elect to the CSI conference, and they had changed the timing of the conference. So my first year, there was no conference. And the second year, it was going to be in Chicago. And I had never been to Chicago. And as an architect, of course, I was like, I want to go to Chicago.
Yeah.
I'm already doing this. I'll do this for a little bit longer so I can get a trip to Chicago out of it. And it was really cool. Definitely, like, I've gone to a lot of the CSI conventions and very much enjoyed the networking and the education and just, being with like-minded other nerdy specifiers. But so, after I served as Oklahoma City chapter president, I was still very involved and on that board as a director for many years. And I was, I think, oh gosh, probably way too many different committee chairs as well. So I did a lot of different little wearing of hats in that chapter. And then I did end up serving as the South Central Region president after kind of going up a couple other ranks in the South Central. And that was basically all of the chapters in Oklahoma and Texas. And the region level was a little bit more political feeling. It felt like a little bit more people management type of stuff. And it was like, I was like, oh, okay. So I feel like I learned some diplomacy while I was doing some of those leadership things. And just, trying to kind of talk through people having differing opinions or ways they think we should be doing things. So that was very eye-opening, and I feel like definitely helpful to, just my day-to-day as an architect as well. And then when I moved to Portland, as I mentioned, I was already familiar with a couple of people in the Portland chapter, and it was very, very nice to be like, I think the first event I walked into at Portland, there might have been 10 people, and I think I knew 5 or 6 of them. And I was like,
that's always so nice.
Yeah. So that was really nice to kind of have a space that already felt friendly and welcoming to come to in a new city where I really didn't know anyone else. And then obviously I moved here in 2019, which is like 9 months before the pandemic started. So it's even been difficult to meet a lot of people because there just weren't as many events. And but I jumped right onto the Portland board and I served as a director. And I am currently the outreach chair, and I handle all of our social media for CSI Portland. And I also handle all of the AIA certificates. So in our chapter, we have the wonderful Cherise Lakeside, who teaches a CDT study session twice a year. And it is a really, really excellent session. She's got just a ton of real world examples that are like helpful in making the, content that can be a little dry if it's presented in a certain way. But she's got all these really engaging examples that really make it connect and like hit a little bit differently than some of the other trainings that I've seen. So a couple of years ago, I worked very hard to get all of those CDT study sessions listed for AIA HSW credit. So now if you take Cherise's class, you can get up to 18 HSW hours. And so I handle all of the reporting and all of the certificates for those classes twice a year, as well as like all of our CSI Portland meetings. And then at the institute level, I am on the nominating committee for the second year. Last year was the first year I did that, and it was very interesting. We got to interview basically the candidates, so we'll sit and serve on the CSI institute level board. And I am also on CSI's DE&I task force, which was charged with basically providing like some a business case for DE&I and CSI, which we put together like with the help of a consultant, and we presented some information on that at CSI's conference in October. So still kind of hanging tight to see what's next for that group. I am also Portland has a Jedi committee. So I've been very active in that committee as well. And actually it's been really interesting because through that committee, Cherise ended up connecting me with someone named Rachel Nava, who's a CSI member in Chicago. And we ended up becoming good friends just via chatting, about some of these efforts and what our chapters were doing. And then her husband ended up coming to work for Conspectus. And it's just one of those, like, there's so many little connections and mutual things that happen in this industry. It is very close in the industry where, you definitely don't want to burn any bridges. But so, yeah, now I'm not really officially on the CSI Portland board, but I'm definitely very, very involved and still kind of in charge of some committees and helping out wherever I can. And I'm also always the unofficial photographer wherever. I just take pictures, so I'm always that person.
Hey, you always need that person.
Right.
Make sure you capture everything.
Right. And so if I'm not going to be there, I'm like, hey, take some pictures.
Yeah. That DEI report would be very interesting to look at because I know it's more locally in Pittsburgh, but I've found more spec writers are the more seasoned architects about to retire. I don't see as many young professionals going into spec writing. Welcome back. The next episode I want to highlight for you is episode number 21 with Bob Bailey. He is near and dear to my heart. He has been one of my mentors and advocates since starting my career and actually introduced me to Melody, who is the last person you heard from. Unfortunately, Bob Bailey passed away earlier this year, and so it is really hard to lose who was my number one mentor to help me on my career path, and he was so excited to see where I was taking MentorDino. So even if you go the spec writer route, you can still be an amazing mentor and advocate for young professionals and the career as a whole. I've had a lot of very frank conversations and happy hour drinks and coffees with Bob during my time working with him directly in-house and then staying in touch once I left that firm. And those definitely left an impact on my career and taught me about specifications, construction, being on a job site, drawing. So just because you go the spec writer route does not mean you don't have a hand in another architect's career journey. It doesn't mean you can't be a mentor anymore, and it doesn't mean they're not going to pull you out on a job site because you are so valuable in your information and knowledge. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode highlighting Bob Bailey, and so sad to see him no longer with me to help, but glad I have this podcast episode to remember how much he meant to myself and others in the AEC industry here in Pittsburgh. So hopefully you guys enjoy this clip from Bob Bailey's episode.
I had some good mentors early on and along the way, and one of them I'm still working with, Fred Watts. Has I'm still learning from Fred. So I was fortunate to have I would say good mentorship as far as the specifications community. The local chapter of the Construction Specifications Institute, CSI, I think was, a little stronger 35, 40 years ago than it is now. And we had some spec writers who there was a larger pool of spec writers, and so we had some in the group who were pretty experienced and had a lot to share. We used to do a review class for the certified specifier exam, and one of the spec writers kind of disdained the idea of putting up slides and notes, and he just told anecdotes, but they were they had a point, and there were good illustrations. So as far as being a mentor, I don't think I really started doing that in earnest until I came back to WTW in 2012, and that was part of my mission when I came back, and that was it was enjoyable. We had at that time we had a pretty good group of project architects, and part of what I did was just getting them to share among themselves, which proved to be valuable for everybody. So
just sharing like their experiences
and talking about it, and okay, so what do we do about it, type of thing.
Yeah, so I guess more acknowledging difficulties on projects or lessons learned and being open about it rather than shameful, because some people can feel they don't want people to know they didn't do something correctly. But diving more into CSI, since you mentioned it, you've been very involved for a number of years. I know that was the first networking event I went to that you pulled me. I believe it was the CSI holiday party, and then I got to other events after that. Tell us a little bit more about that organization and the roles you've had.
Well, I started out with the Pittsburgh chapter because Charles Brown at WTW would give me the chapter newsletter, and I would read it. And one day I saw in there that the editor, who at the time happened to be Bill Wilson, who is now president of Specified Systems glazing contractors, Bill was looking for someone to write a column from an architectural point of view. And I like to write, so I said, I'll do it. Joined the chapter. And, Bill was pretty smart. He played that so that he could get out of the editor's role, and guess who got it?
Yep.
And so over the years, I've been editor of the newsletter 3 or 4 times, and that's presently what I do. But along the way, I've also been programs chair, and I participated in the educational courses that we put on. I've been chapter president, and a couple other committees. I haven't been treasurer or secretary, though, but I haven't really had a position at the regional level, although I've attended a number of region conferences over the year. And at the national level, I volunteered to help write new questions for the CCS exam a couple of years ago. So, and I've been to several national conventions over the years. I've been a member almost 40 years. So, yeah, I think, anybody who has an interest in specifications ought to join the organization.
And I would say even beyond specifications, I am not a spec writer, and I do enjoy going to CSI events, especially the holiday party, because it's a good way to talk to product reps that I have seen recently, haven't seen recently, what's new. It's fun to go to those and see everybody. And I wouldn't call it just like the spec writers of the city.
Well, it's good to have those contacts. CSI events are pretty good for networking. That's why a lot of people go.
Do you have any advice for anyone looking to get involved with their local CSI chapter?
Number one, I'd say do it. And number two, sometimes a good way to get more immersed in what the chapter is all about is to be on a committee.
Yeah, and actually do something and not just be a member.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes for any organization. If there's something you're passionate about, you can always be a member somewhere. But if you're not putting in the effort to do other things, then you're not going to get as much out of it, if I'm making sense.
I've always felt that way. So.
And you can always learn new ways of doing the newsletter. I know I taught you InDesign, so then you can work a little bit more efficiently with the newsletter. Do you have any advice for others who are new to specifications or thinking about leading specifications for their project? Maybe not for their office yet, but want to tackle doing the specs?
I think I would definitely look into the CSI certifications, the CDT and the CCS. First one is Certified Documents Technologist, and then the second one is Certified Construction Specifier. One is the prerequisite to the other, but when you study for those, you find out the breadth of what you need to know as a spec writer. If your firm subscribes to a master guide system, I would say get into it and poke around and get familiar with it and kind of understand what those are all about.
Yeah, and so that would be more different programs like eSpec, or I interviewed Melody with Conspectus that has their own platform. Because I'm sure you started out with handwriting specs, moving to Word,
Yes.
and now using more cloud-based softwares to help in the process. How do you feel that growth has changed how you write specs?
I think you can do it quicker if you know what you're doing. If you don't, it can maybe give you a false sense that you do, because I think just about all the programs available now are smart systems. You can kind of pick and choose your way through those, and you may end up with something that you think is, correct or accurate, and you may have confusing choices in there, that sort of thing.
I remember you're helping me with specs this one time, and we were going through what's needed on a project. And you were just crossing out entire giant sections of the spec, and it was stressing me out. I'm like, I don't know. Can I delete that yet? That's where I like a little bit more of the online platforms that has kind of the history to if you want to bring something back or if something changes. But I remember you're like, nope, don't need any of this stuff. Cross everything out. And I'm like, I panicked like a few years out of school and not knowing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and that was probably me, going overboard. That's just so many years of experience. You just by looking, don't need that.
Yeah. Well, I even did that on drawings too. If it was, you have your standard door elevations or something, and you're doing a small project that you don't need 15 door elevations, you just
Right.
need one or two. I would take that drafting view and I'd duplicate it, and I'd put the copy in the actual drawing set or leave a copy as an archive in case the project architect or PM was like, you did this all wrong, bring this back. So I like having copies. I can't remember what it was. But definitely crossing stuff out and in Word was definitely stressful, but, also didn't understand all the different language parts.
Well, the good thing with the system we use now is none of it goes away. It's all in there if you want to bring it back.
Do you think we'll ever move to not having printed out documents between drawings and specs?
Aren't we kind of there now?
For the most part.
Does anybody print paper copies of specs anymore?
I think we always need that archive. I will say I've been in like job trailers where they have the printed set and they have the project manual, but it's off in the corner collecting dust and everybody's just on tablets checking and seeing what's going on.
Well, I think some specs still say that, you have to keep a set of documents in the job trailer type of thing.
Yeah. And I'm learning a lot with even the CDT exam that I thought it was a lot more spec heavy in terms of learning, but it's actually a lot more contracts and specs. So a little bit more of that, the general conditions up front, how the workflow goes, and how a whole project comes together, which I wish I knew earlier and should have taken this exam while studying for the AREs.
Well, I see that all the time, and I think that's a general weakness with architects is that they don't know or understand what's in the general conditions. And that document is used on the agreement on just about every project.
Yeah, and unless it's special for a particular owner,
it describes the roles of the parties to the contract and describes things that can happen as a result of the project and how that gets resolved.
Yeah, and if you have any issues on the job site, it can be a guide plate for you there to know what was actually agreed upon and knowing you can look there for something.
And I'll get questions like, where does it say in the general conditions that such and such? And I'll say, it doesn't.
You haven't read it. You don't know where it is.
You may have seen that in an owner's supplementary conditions, which modifies the general conditions, but it's not in the general conditions.
When you QC documents, I have seen over the years that a lot of people will just do quality checks on the drawings, and nobody ever opens up the specs to cross-check the specs. Do you have any advice on how that could be better integrated?
Should be looking at both. It's like I tell young architects who are attempting to do specs on their project. I said, make your spec notes as you're doing your drawings. Even the little stuff. If there's things you want a certain way, make a note of it. Specifications don't always have to be in spec language. Sometimes we have to, describe it in prose what we want. But the point is to build them both together, and so if you check one and don't check the other, that's kind of pointless. What would happen if you only looked at the specs?
Welcome back. And I've got One final person I want to introduce you guys to during this discussion on specifications, and it's Cherise Lakeside. She was episode number 74. I met Cherise through Bob and Melody. The spec writing world in CSI is even smaller than the architecture community as a whole. So professionals definitely know each other all around the country. And I actually took Cherise's CDT course as well ahead of that exam. And she is an amazing person. We probably could have talked for another couple hours if we had the time. But this time, I want to talk to you about it may not be a direct path. You may not be an architect to start out like Bob and Melody. You could take a break in your career and really dive in and sink your teeth into something once you find your passion and something you enjoy doing. And that's what happened with Cherise. And she is actually also a fellow at CSI. So you can also learn a little bit about what it's like to become a fellow and learn more about our industry, why she also pushes to advocate in educating professionals. And if you recognize her voice, she is also the podcast host for ARCAT's Detailed podcast. So hopefully you guys enjoy this episode with Cherise Lakeside. And again, she was episode number 74. Every person doesn't have to make the same mistake year after year.
Well, when our top 5 risks in the industry are the same for 50 years, we're not ever learning not to make those mistakes because they haven't changed.
Yeah. Do you have the top 5 memorized?
Oh, you're going to ask me to do that. I'm not. I'm going to forget something. One is failure to supervise inexperienced employees. One is conflicts, errors, and omissions in your contract documents. I think they call it improperly coordinated contract documents. One is failure to communicate effectively with your consultants and engineers. I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head.
Hey, you got 3.
I always have to look at the list. Those are the 3 big ones that are the most important to me. But all 5 are important, and all 5 are, if I could remember the other 2 off the top of my head, you would go, yep, as we're ticking every single one of them off.
Even those 3, I'm like, yeah, and I can probably list off 3 things for each of those of something I've messed up in my career. So,
and we all can. But we could be doing so much better. That's what drives me crazy. I don't expect everybody to know it all, but we could be doing just with basic knowledge that nobody ever, I don't know how many people walked out of my class going, wow, how did I not know that? Things like submittals and not having to review things you didn't ask for and not asking for things you shouldn't be asking for. Safety data sheets. Those should not be in your specifications because you're not qualified to review them. Things, just dumb little things like that are all over the place, but nobody knows that.
Yeah.
That's I spent my whole career fixing that. All of those things in specs as people try to put them in.
Yeah. I think Bob beat that into my head with not looking at MSDS paperwork as it was coming in. But that was one of the main reasons why I started MentorDino. I just kept seeing the same mistakes or people getting frustrated or these long hours or crazy last minute changes that if communication was fixed or if we just taught people to have a little bit of a baseline, how much further and better could our buildings be and careers be in the profession if you had a better pedestal to stand on to start and not have to figure out how to get on top of the pedestal. So.
I have to say that I appreciate every firm I've worked for. I've gone to the senior management and said, so I teach this class. It's a 12-week class, 2 hours a week. I know I'm asking for a lot of time, but it'll be a game changer for your staff. And I've received support from every firm. And in a couple of the firms, I taught it more than once. It wasn't one and done. Got new people, a year's gone by and taught it again. And they even bought lunches. I mean, all kinds of things to encourage their people to attend. And you know how it is. Most senior people are often really busy. So you end up with more of the staff, but a lot of those senior people never learned right. So it was really fun to finish this class and have the more junior staff go back, and then their boss tells them to do something and they're going,
No.
Cherise said no. Here's why. Here's why we don't do that. And they don't know that. I think I love those moments when the younger people came back and said, I taught my boss something today.
Yeah, because teaching can come from every direction.
It does. And when that's the hope, is if enough people learn, they'll all be teaching each other.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually maybe those top 5 risks will change.
Maybe.
I can hope. I'm really optimistic person. And I don't know, that'll probably kill me someday, but I can hope.
Yeah. But I want to pivot into the CDT exam and everything you do with CSI. So CSI, the Construction Specifications Institute, has a series of exams and does not mean that you want to go be a spec writer to go take one of their exams. I know I studied for the CDT in the spring and passed, and so that's the Construction Document Technologist. I was studying for the CCCS, but then I was like, I'm going to take a break, and I wanted more practice before it. But for the CDT exam, what have you learned from teaching those courses over the years? As much as you teach professionals, what have you learned?
Oh, wow. We don't have time for this. I've learned a lot of things, and my CSI journey's been a little weird because I came into CSI far later than most people in CSI. So I just had my, I think, 13th anniversary. I won't tell you how old I was when I joined CSI, but it was well into my career. And a lot of the people, not everybody, we have young people in CSI as well, but a lot of the people that I know that are kind of sitting in the place I'm sitting in CSI have been in 25 years, 30 years, 35 years. I think our Portland chapter was started in we're about to have our 60th anniversary. So I can tell you that chapter started before I was born. And so I came in really, really late because I was raising a family. I was raising 4 kids. I had a full-time job, busy kids. I didn't think I had time for CSI. Even though my boss had been telling me for years, you really should get involved in CSI. And that's one of my biggest, I don't believe in regrets. They're lessons, but I wish I would have done it when I was younger because it brought so much to my career. Just being a part of CSI, teaching the CDT has done a lot of reinforcing how much people don't know out there that they need to know. And I love working with younger professionals, and I wouldn't be where I'm at now in my career if it weren't for the mentors that I had. That first firm I worked at, I was 20 when I started working there, and they hired me to answer the phone. And I worked for 3 partners that were willing to teach me anything I wanted to know. And I don't like being bored, so I wanted to know everything. And that was a game changer and continues to be a game changer for me every day, that anything I went to them with, oh, why do we do this? What is this? What does this mean? And so I feel a responsibility to give that back.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that responsibility super personally because I know how much it changed the course of my whole career and their mentorship. Now, if I would have listened to them when I was 20 and not waited till way, way, way later, I would have joined CSI, and I would think I might be queen of the world right now had I done that. I didn't, so I don't get the crown because I didn't listen. But being a part of an organization, CSI or any organization, really opens, especially these days. I started when we had one Radio Shack computer on a desk, and you had to write code to make a line bold. Now we can interact with people all over the world like you and I are right now in 2 completely different cities. I didn't have that when I was younger. And your network just expands and your mentors expand. Like I could go ask my bosses all kinds of things, but that firm did schools. We did a lot of public work, which, by the way, is a great way to make sure you know how to do everything in contract documents. Do some public work. But they couldn't answer questions about other types of work. For me, that's all they had ever done was schools. Having this network that you can call, and then CSI is all disciplines. It's not spec writers. So let's just get that fallacy out of the way right now. And they don't, while there is a certification to be a certified construction specifier, they don't teach just specifications. They teach project delivery and contract administration and construction administration and spec writing. And you have all disciplines in a room when you go to a meeting. I learn every single time I go to a meeting or a conference or an event. You know, I might have a contractor standing there and an engineer and an architect. And I said, okay, so I just encountered this. I want all three of you to give me your point of view. And you get three completely different answers from that perspective that really helps you make a better choice on how you're going to move forward with whatever it is you're working on. And I have people all over the country that I can pick up the phone at any time and say, hey, I need a little help. I have no idea what I'm doing, or I don't understand how this works. And I know that this is a specialty for you. So I have learned to expand my borders, if anything, from CSI, and to not be in a tunnel, not be in just, the architecture bubble or just the engineering bubble, because everything we do in CSI is all disciplines involved. And that's been probably the biggest game changer in my career. So I don't look at anything with that tunnel vision ever.
Now, this is probably more me knowing more the Pittsburgh chapter, which we are very small. But when I've gone, I've only seen product reps, architects, and architectural spec writers. There's that gap of, I don't see engineers going or engineering products, but I feel like, I don't know if it's just small city and they should be there, or if it is really geared towards the architectural side.
I think that you're going to see more architects in some of the other disciplines at a CSI meeting, but I also think that the variety of people you have at a meeting is wholly dependent on the chapter and the resources that it has. We happen to have a pretty large chapter. I know a number of years ago, we were the third largest chapter in the country. I don't know where we sit now, but I'm sure we're still in the top three. We also have a very, very dynamic, close group in our chapter that is a bunch of just crazy committed professionals. So we're constantly thinking outside the box, like having joint meetings with ASHRAE, or, we have as a matter of fact, it's tomorrow night and I can't go and I'm really sad. We have a December ugly sweater party that's totally geared around nothing but young professionals. And we invite, I don't know how many they invited this year. We've gone as high as 12 different industry associations in the area. We have one big party with a bunch of other organizations. And then we ask all the more senior people to come to the party as well, because we want to create an atmosphere. It's totally a party. It's not, it's all fun. There's no presentation or no education at this particular meeting, but we want to bring all these different disciplines, senior people in the same room with all these different disciplines, younger people. Make some connections, find some mentors. Maybe you're a young architect and you meet up with an older mechanical engineer, you make friends, and now you have somebody you feel you can call if you're trying to tackle something and you need advice. We do a lot of stuff like that, but every chapter is different. And some smaller chapters struggle a little bit more or have less resources, or sometimes they call it voluntelling you to do things. Some chapters have had the same leadership for a really long time and maybe haven't worked as hard to bring in younger people. And sometimes people are just tired and doing what they already know. So it depends on the chapter. We also have a virtual chapter. It's called CSI Next, because not everybody has a chapter close to them. So that is also an option for people who want to become involved in CSI, don't have a chapter nearby, or Maybe it's one of the really small chapters that can't do as much, or they can do both. But that's another way, and that's getting all over the country.
Yep. Expanding your network.
Yeah. So you hear different things about any organization from city to city. I always tell people, if you really want to rock the free world, move to Portland. Come hang out with us. That's what I told Melody. And look, now she lives here.
And now she's there because she was in Oklahoma.
She was in Oklahoma. The first time I met Melody, I told her, oh, you so need to live in Portland. And not only did she move to Portland, but I officiated her and her husband's wedding.
Next level of
next
connections.
Level. Yeah, exactly. We're out there in Portland.
Yeah. And you're an officiant. You may not be the queen of CSI, but I know you also go as the CSI Kraken. So where did that come from?
I keep telling myself I'm going to somehow lose that moniker, but I don't think it's going to be possible. It was a silly thing. Again, I've only been in CSI for 13 years, and I started in CSI by taking the CDT class, and I got cornered by two senior longtime CSI members, fellows, and they're like, you need to be on our board. I had not even been to a CSI meeting yet. And I'm like, are you guys, I don't even know who you are. I have no idea what you do. I'm just looking to get my CDT certification. Well, I ended up on the board. Within 6 months, I was on the board. And I was at one of my very first board meetings. And I had decided, which is unusual for me, to be kind of quiet the first couple of board meetings and just see
what's going on.
Yeah, you don't open your big mouth when you don't understand how the world works. And so I think I was quiet for a meeting and a half. And I don't remember what the topic was that came up. They were debating it ad nauseum. And again, with efficiency being my thing, I want to get it done. I want to get it done now, and I want to do it really well. And then move on. Thing. Yeah. And I said, hey, do you mind if, can I offer a comment? And so I said, what about you do this and you do this and you do this, you do this. Nobody does too much work. We'll have this done, get it done by this. I just threw out some ideas. And the president at the time, Skip Brown, love you, Skip, who I didn't know from Adam, except for he was the president of our chapter. I didn't know him personally. He kind of muttered under his breath because another one of my cohorts in Portland CSI got involved in this conversation as well. So her and I were just both throwing this stuff back and forth. Okay, we're done. And he goes, oh my God, release the Kraken. And it just stuck. So I'm like, okay, if they're going to start calling me that, I'm going to start tweeting with hashtag CSI Kraken on everything I tweet. I even did a full year, 365 days of inspiring professional messages once a day. CSI Kraken rule number 1. It was just, I added it to everything. And then somebody got the bright idea. We need Kraken. We need a logo. So the Portland chapter got a logo, and then we got Kraken Committee sweatshirts. And then we went to the national convention, the little ribbons you get to put on your name tags at the conventions.
Yeah.
We got CSI Kraken ribbons, and you only got one if we thought you were a Kraken. We turned it into this kind of, what it was meant to be is a motivational kind of movement. Go big or go home. Take things that haven't been right and make them better. And it just kind of picked up a life of its own, and it has not left me yet.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but and you also mentioned that you're CSI fellow. So what's the process to become a fellow with CSI?
I think somebody was drinking that day.
It just said, Kraken, go.
It's quite the process. I think completing my fellowship application, I had 2 fellows who were mentors, took about 6 months to do everything for it. And so you can't even think about applying to become a fellow till you've been in CSI a minimum of 5 years. Nobody applies at 5 years. They apply at 20 years. or 25 years. And so they approached me after my 5th anniversary and said, we want to mentor you and we think you should become a fellow. And I basically said, I think you're high. There is no way, these are the best of the people who do what I do. I've been in the organization 5 years. There's no way. And I turned them down, which they could not even understand, like how I could possibly think I could do that. I'm just like, no, it's going to be humiliating because I've been in 5 years. And so they came at me again the next year and said, you don't have a choice. Because again, with my go big or go home kind of attitude, in the short time I've been in, I've done an awful lot of things. And so they just told me, you're doing it whether you like it or not. So it was probably a 4 to 6 month process to get that application filled out. You have to have all the information of everything that you've done, because fellowship is in CSI we have a lot of committed members that do a lot of hard work. In their opinion, they're looking for people who've moved the needle, who have done something substantially outside the borders of all the hard work we all do in our chapters. And so we got it done, and I had every intention of not becoming a fellow, because I know people have been turned down 2-3 times after being in for 20 years doing all kinds of things. So I didn't hold a lot of thought it was going to happen. And I think I got a call at work at like Tuesday morning, and I was on the CSI national board at the time. And the woman that called me was on the board with me. So I thought she was calling me about board business. And she said, congratulations. I said,
What'd I do?
Yeah. For what? It totally I didn't know that they had board members call you to congratulate you. So I was expecting a call from completely different people. And she said, well, you're going to become our next fellow. And they suspect I might be. They don't have every single record back to the beginning of time, but they suspect I could be the shortest tenured fellow in the history of CSI. And so now I am a fellow. I mean, I'm really proud of it. I'm very proud of it. And I have worked really hard, but it still feels like somebody was drinking that day.
Yeah, just surreal. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just didn't think I had anywhere near enough to even put on that application. But a piece of advice I got in that very first class from the same 2 guys that cornered me, one of them said, you're going to be a fellow someday. And I'm giving you a piece of advice now to save you when that time comes. Keep track of every single thing you do in this organization, outside of it, in the industry, even outside the industry. And well, I thought he was absolutely crazy. I seriously didn't even know who these people were. I took his advice to heart. I thought, well, that's not bad advice just for resumes or, whatever. And I think
keeping track of projects you worked on.
You know, and I would say just my list of speaking engagements, and it's just the title of whatever event I was at, is 15 or 16 pages long. And, not including, like it'll just say CDT class. It won't list all 12 classes that I've done twice a year for who knows how long. So when I put that all together, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I've done a few things, a few more things that I thought, it's like, when did I sleep?
Yeah.
So I am super, super proud of that.
No, but delayed congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I think last time I saw the numbers, only 8 or 9% of CSI fellows are women. Because historically this has been a male-dominated industry. That's changing a lot now. So there was an extra added bit of pride walking up there on the stage in my ball gown to get my medal. That I was representing for the girls.
All right, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the conversations I've had with Melody, Bob, and Cherise. All of them are fantastic professionals, and I definitely look up to all of them to see where I can take my career into the future and get better at specifications, get better at spec writing, and hopefully through their lens, help to advocate for specifications and the importance of them in our documents, because they can really make or break a job and making sure it's bid properly. And then we got everything covered that we need. And spending a little bit more time on our specs is never a bad thing. It's not 100% about the drawings to get us through a project. Those spec manuals or spec books can be pretty thick and daunting, especially I know I don't like reading, so they've always been overwhelming to me, but digging your teeth in and doing it one step at a time is just like learning in the AEC industry because you're always learning along the way. So don't be afraid of specs. Reach out to a spec writer if you need help. And if you're interested, I'm sure Melody and Cherise would love to talk to you if you want to go into the spec writing route in your career journey. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.